when you have big political news, you bring in this guy, Jason Calvi. Jason, I don't know if there's nobody running that newsroom camera, right?
There isn't. Is the headroom bad?
You got such great hair. We don't want to take the hair away.
How about this? Boom. How about that?
Perfect.
There
we go. There. We solve problems here. We don't have an engineer running the camera, so we're going to do it. Okay. Not a big surprise. This is not like an unknown dropping in. You've been hinting at this for a while. He's been hinting at this for a while. But who is our latest selection on I would like to be Wisconsin's next governor?
Yeah. The latest entrance on this is Congressman Tom Tiffany from up north, Wisconsin. There's a lot of speculation for months and months that he might run for governor. And I remember asking him when Governor Tony Evers dropped out or said he wasn't going to run for re-election. I said, okay, are you going to run? What's it going to take? And he said he was really Congressman Tiffany was really trying to make sure everything was in order. He really wanted to make sure he'd be able to do the fundraising to be able to compete. He said he needed to be able to assure himself that he could raise tens of millions of dollars that it's going to take to win a race in Wisconsin. This is battleground state, as you know, Ted. And just for comparison purposes, the last go around when Governor Evers won re-election in 2022, his campaign spent about $40 million. And the Republican challenger, Tim Michels, his campaign spent about $28 million. Now, there was a lot of outside money that also flooded the airwaves here in Wisconsin, but you can see that discrepancy between the two campaigns. So I know talking to Tom Tiffany before he launched, he really said he wanted to make sure he'd be able to raise enough money. He's telling me now as a candidate that he's expecting to raise something like $30 or $40 million.
We'll talk about the money in just a second, but for people who don't know him, let's get to know Tom Tiffany here. 67 years old. He'll be 68 in December. He is currently a member of Congress, has been since May of 2020 when he won a special election to take over for Sean Duffy, who was getting out of Congress at that time. Grew up on a dairy farm in Elmwood, Wisconsin, has served in the state assembly, a Senate. He's a girl dad. He's the father of 3 adult children. And he's got a personality. Maybe he might be a firebrand a little bit on social media, but he's a very easy guy to talk to. During the RNC, we had him on a couple of times, and he's a very serious guy when it comes to issues, but he is a Wisconsin guy. He likes talking fishing. He likes talking up north fish fries and supper clubs and restaurants and things like that. So while he was born in Minnesota, he's very much a Wisconsin guy. Have you dealt with him much? Because he's not a congressman from our area.
Right, he's not from our area, so when we're talking about big national issues, we would often ask our Congress members as well as our senators for statements or reaction to the big news in Washington, D.C. And he was definitely somebody who would do interviews with us here in Milwaukee, but he obviously wasn't on the ground much in Milwaukee, except maybe RNC and big events like that, just because it's not his district. So, we often see the Congress people that represent this area doing events in the Milwaukee area, but his district's up north, that old district that you said, a former Congressman Sean Duffy, who left it at one point in time when his family was growing. They were expecting a child with special needs, and at that point he decided to leave Congress. So there was a special election in 2020, and that's when this former state lawmaker at the time, was a state lawmaker, ran for that special election and won, and he's won continually in that very reliably Republican district. So you ask him, well, why would you want to leave a safe seat? I mean, let's be honest, that's a very strong Republican seat. He could probably have that seat for the rest of his life or until he's ready to retire, and he's giving that up now. He's not going to be able to run for Congress in 2026 when his seat would be up, because now he's running for governor.
And you're right, and usually President Trump might say to somebody in a swing district, I don't need you running for Senate. I don't want you running for governor. I need that safe seat. It doesn't matter. With all due respect to Democrats, that's a red district, and it has been for a while, although it was David Obey's district, a Democrat, for a very long time, I think 26 years. So that district sort of represents how the state has changed a little bit over the last decade or so.
Yeah, it really is sort of a really good sense of where Wisconsin has gone. You've seen the cities and the suburban areas around Milwaukee become more, very much Republican strongholds in those suburban WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington counties. And you've seen the strength of the Republican Party in those collar counties sort of shrinking, particularly in Ozaukee and somewhat as well in Waukesha County, where you had 60%, 67% voting for somebody like Scott Walker, and then you've seen those numbers kind of decline over the years in Waukesha, Ozaukee counties. So that's where you've seen sort of decrease for Republicans. But then when you look in this 7th congressional district up north, I mean, that area has really gone from, as you said, represented by a Democrat to really bright red Republican. It really is a sign of how Republicans have strengthened their strength in rural communities around the whole country, and they're continuing to look to bolster that in other districts as well.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I can't remember her name right now, but there's a state senator from up in that area who you have thrown out as somebody that might have been thinking about it.
Yeah, Mary Felskowski.
That's it. Yeah.
State senator. Actually, the state Senate president, actually.
Right.
And she had been considering a run for governor, but she said if Congressman Tiffany gets in, then she's not.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
This, in effect, takes her off the list of potential candidates. So now we're left with 3, and we'll talk about those 3 in a second. But do you think, before we talk about this race and how interesting it is, you have a businessman, you have a county exec, and then you have a member of Congress who's had plenty of experience in the state legislature as well. He does know how the Capitol works in Madison. Is there anyone else thinking about going, I don't want to be the last guy in the pool, but I don't mind being the next guy in the pool?
I think that, I think this definitely shakes up this race, because when you look at who's already in on the Republican side, when you've got somebody like Bill Berrien, who's a Milwaukee area businessman, former Navy SEAL, he's been able to raise some large money, and he himself is pretty wealthy. And then when it comes to the other Republican, County Executive Josh Schoeman from Washington County, he might not have raised the large money like Bill Berrien, but he's able to do sort of the grassroots efforts. He's been across the entire state and has had sort of grassroots appeal and really trying to, for many months now, to get that sort of grassroots appeal. So you see both sides of the coin for how to run a successful campaign with those two, the money from Bill Berrien and then the grassroots support from Josh Schoeman. So that's what Tom Tiffany's going to need to do. He's going to need to raise a lot of that money and also do the grassroots. Now, as far as any other Republicans who could jump into this race, I think that this race is shaken up with Tom Tiffany getting in. I think there's some other names you could throw out there, like Eric Hovde, former and failed Senate candidate for U.S. Senate. But I think at the end of the day, I think Tom Tiffany is seen as a strong competitor. But it's not a guarantee that he's going to win this primary when you've got the money factor, you have the grassroots factor, so he's going to really need to start raising some serious money. And I think it's going to come down to who's going to win this primary, who's going to get the endorsement of President
Hold on,
Trump.
let me ask a question before you answer it, sir. You talk about all the factors, and you're reading my mind here, Jason, because there's one more factor we need to consider, and that is the Trump factor. All of them would love the endorsement of President Trump. Who's got the inside track? They all claim to think that he would be that they would be his guy, but who really does have the inside track?
I would say the congressman has the inside track in that if you look at all 3 of those Republican candidates, the one that the president knows best is Congressman Tom Tiffany, who's been a reliable vote for the president, supporting things on the media, including supporting tariffs, saying that's even though people are dealing with rising costs because of the tariffs, he said that it's actually going to help because it's going to bring back manufacturing jobs to Wisconsin. So he's been a very strong supporter of President Trump. When it comes to Bill Berrien, the difficulty for him getting a President Trump endorsement is back in 2024 when you had the Republican primary for president. Bill Berrien supported not President Trump at the get-go, he supported Nikki Haley.
Right.
That could be seen as a no-go for the supporters of the president. Why couldn't you support him from the very beginning? He wasn't your first pick. He was your second pick in 2024. So that could be a check mark against Bill Berrien winning the endorsement of the president. And then when it comes to Josh Schoeman, a county executive in Washington County, could he have the inside track to winning the endorsement? Possibly. He's got a military background just like Bill Berrien. But again, I think Tom Tiffany has that face-to-face interaction with the president more so than the others and could potentially win this endorsement. So I asked the congressman, how come the president hasn't endorsed you yet? And when he talked with the president after Governor Evers decided not to run for re-election, Congressman Tiffany did speak with President Donald Trump about that. He says he didn't ask for the endorsement at that point, and at that point the president didn't give him an endorsement. and also brought up the issue of being worried about keeping control of Congress. Now, again, as we mentioned, this congressional district that Tom Tiffany represents, very safe, reliably red. So I think that kind of gets wiped away now, and we'll see who Republicans and Democrats put up in that congressional district. But at this point, it's really a waiting game. I think the president's going to want to see how well Tom Tiffany can fundraise. Again, he's talking about big numbers. He's talking about the goal of raising up to $40 million for this campaign. If that money starts to trickle in after he announced last night he's going to have a big rally in Wausau tonight. We'll see how that money trickles in the next 48 hours, see if he really does well on the fundraising, and if that's an indication of the president that it's time to endorse. But again, I think what Republicans are probably telling the president is the endorsement's not needed right now. But when you look at statistics, it will be needed to win that primary, because again and again, when you look at who he's endorsed in the primaries, it's large numbers. Most of them end up winning the Republican nomination.
And one thing Tom Tiffany, I think, has done is he hasn't made a lot of political enemies. He's a normal guy to talk to. You know, like I say, he's a Wisconsin guy. He may have some firebrand tweets here and there, but that might be just his social media office sending him out, and nothing extreme. I mean, but he hasn't made a lot of enemies. He's, I guess to say, he's a fairly likable guy.
Personally, yeah, I think he's not out there fighting with everybody, but there are going to be issues that Democrats are going to hammer him on, including his support in Congress for a bill that would ban abortions at 6 weeks. So in our interview, which you'll see portions of tonight, and also the full interview will be posted on our Fox Local app, you're going to hear me ask him about his stance on abortion. Would he, as governor, sign what he supported in Congress, that 6-week abortion ban? Do you want to know what the answer is, or do you want to wait to see it on Fox Local?
Well, I'd like it now if we can.
Okay, well, this will be an exclusive for you then.
Okay, yeah.
So he pretty much says that he wants to keep the status quo, which is that 20-week abortion ban. So what is the law of the land in Wisconsin on abortion? It's a ban after 20 weeks of pregnancy. And so he wants to keep that on the books. He says that bill came as a work of compromise when they passed it about a decade ago, and he was in the legislature at that point. It did take compromise because there were some people that wanted to allow abortions, with no bans. Others wanted to have it banned from the get-go, and he said that was really a compromise to agree on that 20-week abortion ban for the state of Wisconsin.
We talk about the endorsement of President Trump and where that might go. I think what's also going to be interesting is, where does the endorsement go if one of these three drops out? I know if Shulman drops out first, or if Berrien drops out, where do their followers go? And I guess the question I'm asking is, unlike the Democratic Senate primary a few years ago, where voters really didn't get a choice because Alec Lasry pulled out, Sarah Godlewski pulled out, and they sort of gave it to Mandela Barnes, are all three of these guys going to make it to the primary? Are voters going to have three, I'm not going to say distinct, but three separate choices?
That's the question that we ask all of the candidates.
Okay.
We asked all of the Democrats when we had a chance. We've asked all of the Republicans, do you commit right here and now to stay in this race until the primary? Because you look back and you say, in 2022, those Democratic primary voters, they didn't really get a chance to weigh, did you like Alex Lasry better? Did you like Sarah Godlewski? Who did you like better for the primary? Because they got out right before the voting started there across Wisconsin. So that's a key issue. I think when I talked with Congressman Tiffany about this issue, his answer was clear. He's saying, yeah, I know I have to win the primary, but his real focus is winning the general. I think in that way, that answer reveals that in his mind, maybe he sees himself as the front runner. Is he the front runner, Ted? That is still an open question. It definitely shakes up the race. We're going to see how well he does on fundraising and how well he appeals to people at the grassroots levels now that he gets out statewide to really try to win both of those.
Do we know when the next Marquette poll is on this? Because you've got a handful of Democrats, and now you've got 3 Republicans. That's going to be fairly interesting to see where that poll goes.
Yeah.
Not that sets the tone necessarily, but it does give voters a chance to say, oh, this person has more of a chance than I thought he or she did.
Yeah.
So it is influential in some circles, yes?
Oh, definitely. I'm looking up right now in my phone.
That's the beauty of Wisconsin Live Desk is we can watch and I can talk while you Google.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not
people get to
Google.
see the news being made.
It's not Google, Ted. This is me looking at my calendar because I know I put an entry in here for the next Marquette poll.
Yes.
But I can't seem to find it at that right now. So I know that there's polling. I think one of the questions is going to be, do you even know anything about all these candidates? That's going to be one of the crucial questions, because before you can say, who do you prefer for governor, do you even know who Bill Berrien is? Do you even know who Francesca Hong is? Okay, those are the Democrat-Republican examples there. That'll be one of the first questions. I know I had an entry in my phone calendar here for when the next poll is. I can't seem to find it.
That's okay.